Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me once again on Summits with a Purpose in conversation with the one and only Sean Wisedale. So, Sean Wisedale, among other things that he's going to talk to us about, was the first African man from Africa to finish the 7 summits. So we're going to talk about that, what it means, what it meant then, what it means today, and all the other things that are mountaineering and adventure that Sean has done, that he's got insights on, so that we can follow and maybe, we'll learn from him 1 or 2 things, or maybe many things like I have over the years. He's also an accomplished author and a photographer, among many things. So Sean, that's really the little bit that I know about you, but there's a bit more than that. Please tell the people that are following, that are watching now, that will watch in future, who Sean Wisedale really is.
Thanks, Sarah, and welcome everybody. Geez, what a great introduction there, Sarah. Where did you get all that information?
I've got
I can hardly wait to hear what I've got to say. Except that when Sarah saw me, when the screen came up like this, she said, "You look so old."
That's between us. I thought I was watching Mesna, but no, you still look handsome, Sean.
Yeah, oh, thanks, Sarah. You're looking great too. I said to you when I saw her, first of all, I haven't seen Sarah for a long time, because actually over the years we've run into each other on different mountains, and I said to her, right now you look like you're ready for Ibiza. So look at me. We've been thrashing around here. We on the south coast of Natal. Oh, sorry, the north coast of Natal. And it's beautiful here. You know what it's like, the weather in Durban this time of the year. It's shorts and T-shirts. It's one of the best reasons in the world to live here on the Natal north coast. And we do lots of fishing, and we're trying to raise the kids. I've got a 4-year-old son and an 8-year-old daughter, and I've got a lovely wife, Catherine. So as a little family, we spend quite a lot of time. We spend a lot of time together, and the lockdown period has been very interesting, as it is for everybody. You know, when you think about the cost of school fees, when you come out of lockdown, you realize that every cent that you spend on education and teaching is worth it. And we've been it's been an interesting period, but also quite a testing one, you know, but it's good to get to know your family, because right now, and just to give you our current plans, are we pretty much selling up, and we are going to try and sail around the world as a family. Yeah, as a family. So that's actually been my long-term dream. Before I started climbing, I was sailing, and I used to enjoy sailing across the oceans, and I enjoyed. I had a small boat, and we used to go on trips all over Madagascar and Mozambique and down to Cape Town, and then when I was a youngster, I sailed in the Mediterranean. I sailed to Israel, and in the Northern Atlantic. And so my grounding actually before I started climbing was in sailing. Which was quite a nice sort of transition, because obviously there's a lot of rope work involved with mountaineering, and I think that helped me quite a lot. Was the knowledge of rope work, and tying knots, and placing anchors and things like that, and so that is kind of where we're going now, is onto the high seas. And so we've done this kind of full circle. And so I'm very excited about that, because it's also an opportunity to try and ground our children, and to educate them into what's going on in the globe, different religions, different languages, different cultures, different levels of education, mathematics, science, geography, spend time on the oceans, learning about planet Earth and interacting with planet Earth. and trying to give the children a good grounding before I croak, because I'm old now, said Sarah.
I think lockdown has given you a very good ground, actually, to homeschool, good preparation for sailing, I suppose.
Yeah, it's, seriously, if you want to destroy a relationship with your child, become their teacher. Seriously, I mean, it's really hard work. And the most interesting thing with it was that children during lockdown, for some reason, and we've heard it from lots of different parents and friends of parents of children, that the kids, actually the volume of work has quadrupled. And I mean, I think it's a good thing, really, because you know what children are like. They need lots of stimulation, and you need to, kind of wear them out so that they sleep well and they eat well, and and education is vital. It's important to be able to be literate and to have a good grounding in mathematics and science, and understand how the universe works, how the planet, how our planet works, how we revolve around the sun 364.25 days. Every 4 years, we take 365 days. So the thing with that is, learn about the seasons, learn about the hemispheres, southern and northern hemisphere, learn about Antarctica, Arctic, learn about glaciers, learn about deserts. So actually, it's been good. It also refreshes your own knowledge. I said to my wife, "Oh, now we're in trouble. Now we're going to have to become teachers." And frankly, if I had to try and write my driver's license again, I think I would fail.
That is interesting. Hello, Kino. I see you with us. So thank you so much. And thanks to Charlene for introducing you to the channel. Sean, you are one of the few people, if not the only one, that I know that started with Everest as one of the 7 summits. Is that correct? Or did you do Kili before Everest?
No. What happened with it was my background in mountaineering began as a filmmaker. So in other words, what I was involved with was making films of expeditions early on. What happened with it was that I flew to Everest Base Camp with Derek Watts in 1996 to go and interview Cathy O'Dowd. She had just summited Everest. So here we had the very first South African to climb Mount Everest, and she had just got into Kathmandu. And what happened with it was my daughter's crouching around in the back. It's okay. Is that Cathy O'Dowd had just summited Everest. And what happened with that was that Carte Blanche, who I used to freelance for as a cameraman, and I produced a few inserts for them. What happened with it was that as a freelance cameraman, I was hired to fly with Diana Lucas and Derek Watts to Mt Everest Base Camp. It had been vacated. It was the end of the season. But Cathy O'Dowd had summited Everest about 10 days earlier than that. Maybe even just about a week earlier. I don't remember the exact date. So she was in Kathmandu celebrating, and Carte Blanche flew into Kathmandu, picked her up in a helicopter, and flew her back to base camp. All right, to an empty base camp on the southern side. As you know, normally there's like, maybe 1,000 people in Everest Base Camp. But on this occasion, we landed there. It was completely empty. Not a soul, not a tent, nothing there. And so we landed the helicopter. And what happened with it is then we started interviewing Cathy. And she was, what had happened was it was quite a risky flight because the weather wasn't great. So when we landed, and, flying into the Himalayas with a helicopter, as you'll know, coming in and out of the helicopters is an incredible experience, because when you're flying at 6,000 meters above sea level, okay, which is as high as that helicopter can fly, it can't fly any higher, ceiling altitude, is that what happens that every now and again through the cloud, suddenly this peak would pop up. And I would see this peak, and the peak was 2,500 meters higher, 2.5 kilometers higher than what we were flying. So I was absolutely blown away with the Himalayas. The Himalayas just grabbed me. And I just, the imagery, you know, the majesty, the magnificence, that, you know, you cannot imagine how such an incredible natural existence occurred. How does a piece of rock get pushed 9 kilometers into the sky, you know, from sea level? And, you know, we know that with collisions of continents between Asia and India, that through fold, that these mountains have been pushed up to that altitude. So when you're flying in and you see those mountains, wow, I mean, you know, Sarah, it's just, the imagery is absolutely phenomenal. And the feeling there, the power in the mountains, it really, there's a resonance there. You know, there's the mountains, as you know, they present an interesting challenge to humans in many, many ways, especially if you're a photographer. Photographer, what happens with it, or a filmmaker, is, yes, mountains are magnificent and they're absolutely wonderful to photograph. But the thing with it really is, when you put men into the environment of mountains, and men and women, obviously, I use the word men as representing humankind, is when you put humankind, is probably a more politically correct way to say things. And bear in mind that that now what happens with it is, when you get humankind into mountains, the challenges that mountains present to them, the hardships and the struggle that they have to endure, the altitude, the nausea, the headaches, the crevasses, the frostbite, falling into the avalanches, the malnutrition, the dehydration, the cold, the wind. You know, all of these incredible challenges that get thrown at you as a mountaineer. When you speak to someone who's climbed to the summit of a great mountain, and you look in their eyes, and you look deep in their eyes, and you see what's in there, you can see that they have experienced some level of consciousness. In other words, they've made a choice to go to that altitude. They've made a choice to take on those challenges. And what happens with that really is that you then create a consciousness, whether you fail or whether you're successful. But particularly if you're successful, if people get to the top of a mountain, when you look into their eyes and you hear how they speak after they've been to the top of a mountain, that they have something that is incredible. They have some kind of a connection, something that's happened, something that's been registered in their subconscious, that conscious experience of managing that struggle, that there's something inside of them that I found particularly alluring and interesting to make films about. Because when people suffer that much and they achieve that sort of greatness, I use greatness in broad terms, but what I'm saying with it is that stream of consciousness that they experience when they get to the top of the mountain, that relief, that feeling of accomplishment and achievement after all of those struggles. And bear in mind on Everest that you're in there for 10 weeks on ice. It's seriously, that grabbed me. And so when I said to Derek Watts at Everest Base Camp, when we did this interview with Kathy O'Dowd, when I saw, you know, what she spoke about, when she spoke about what it was like to stand on top of Everest, and Kathy O'Dowd is very level-headed. She's humble and reserved, I would say. And I think that had a great deal of impact in inspiring me to say to Derek Watts there and then at Everest Base Camp, and I said to him, we were about to get in that helicopter, I said, Derek, one day I'm going to come back here and I'm going to climb this mountain. Wow. And so that was a very profound moment, because what that meant really is, you know, there's only one way to develop trust with anyone, and if you say you're going to do it and tell the truth.
Yeah.
And the thing with it is, I had to find a way to do it. So the way I found a way was, as soon as I got back to South Africa, immediately I got back, I started researching what was involved in trying to get up Everest. And you know, it all starts with resources. You know, the amount of money that you need to climb that mountain now, as you know, it's $11,000 US just for the piece of paper, the permit for one person, $11,000. So where are
Yeah,
you
and
going to
I
get that money from unless you're rich and you know, or you can raise a sponsorship.
yeah, I understand very soon it's going to go up
So
because
the
on
thing with that is,
go ahead,
yeah,
Sean.
it's you know, the cost of the cost of the resources required to get up a big mountain now are massive, because you know the governments of all these countries know the value of these mountains. They know that the cost of that conscious stream is really, they can get value out of it. I mean, Kilimanjaro now, it's close on $170 a day to climb Kili, and that's without any. That's just the piece of paper, just the permit. And you know, the thing with this is now, and increasingly with those costs, you think that a lot of that would go back into the mountain and it does, you know. But I know that for example, like with Everest, where it goes $11,000-12,000 for the permit only, without the logistics, without the guide, out the oxygen, all that sort of thing, that sometimes I think that, you know, it's hard work trying to get the resources together just to climb the mountain. Never mind all the training, the preparation that's involved, you know, all that sort of stuff that goes with getting up that hill. So what I did was I found a group of guys who were going to climb. They were going to climb it on the northern side, and I phoned them up and I said, Alex, I'm keen to climb. And Alex Harris, he was the leader of the expedition, said, have you got any climbing experience? And I said, not much. I've flown to Everest Base Camp in a helicopter. And he was like, oh, yeah, I don't know whether that's going to work or not. I said, look, I'll tell you what I am, is I'm a filmmaker and I can shoot. And I know my camera inside out. I really, it's like it's a part of me. I'm instinctive with my camera. And I said, I'll come along and I'll make a movie, and I'll try and get it broadcast on TV3. SABC TV 3, and that way I managed to get onto the tour, and we went onto the northern side of Everest with absolutely the minimum, the lowest. I reckon we must have been the lowest budget in history. No oxygen, no Sherpas. We had barrels of sponsored sugar, of chocolate, and all. I lost a molar. When I came back from that expedition, because we had tried as hard as we could to get up that mountain, and we got up to 7,000 meters, 7,200 meters. We couldn't get any higher because the wind was howling. It was post-monsoon on the northern side of Everest, and the wind was howling. And when the time I got back, I had a chap in my bottom lip that was so big that I could put my pinky inside it. It could put in like this in the crack in my bottom lip. I had this crevasse. And then for 3 months after that, I spoke with a lisp. That's how I had to speak, because every time I speak, my lip would crack. And so I learned the hard way. But Everest was the very first mountain that I climbed. I didn't get to the top.
So,
but it was a good grounding.
When did you first get to the top, and what's the story there? Because somebody said you were not one of the climbers, you were the cameraman, but you summited, I believe, with the Discovery expedition.
Yep, 2003. You know, if you want to raise a sponsorship to go and climb Everest now, you know, you've got to provide publicity and media coverage.
Yeah.
You know, a sponsor like Discovery, who sponsored us to climb Everest in 2003, they put their money where their mouth is. Because what happens with it is, when you start aligning the blueprint of your company and paralleling the values of your company to a climb like getting to the top of the mountain, there's huge risk involved. The risk that's involved with that is that nobody, not one climber on the planet, no matter who they are, even the Sherpa who's climbed, upper Sherpa who's climbed 21 times to the summit, he cannot guarantee you getting that flag on the summit.
Yeah, true.
Because as we know, when we went in 2015, we were at base camp, we were waiting to go, we were ready to start climbing, and then the avalanche hit. And then it sent us home. So when you're a sponsor taking on an expedition and taking on, you know, the values, when you take on what's involved with, and you associate the blueprint of your company with the elements of mountaineering, is that you take huge risk.
Yeah.
You know, there are fatalities on mountains. When we were there, you know, Sarah, there were 22 fatalities in the avalanche. People don't want that tagged to their business name.
Yeah.
People want things to go smoothly. They want their summit, their flag on the top shining brightly. It must be just nice and square like that, not too much wind.
Nice and square. That's a good one.
I want to be able to read it. So the thing with it really is, if you want to be associated with mountaineering, and you're prepared to take the risks of being associated, not just the financial risks, but all the other risks that go with it, the personalities. I mean, remember that in 1996, the Sunday Times Mt Everest expedition, that expedition fell apart in controversy like no tomorrow.
Yeah.
So the risk of taking on an expedition, different personalities, you know, up against the elements of Mother Nature. Mother Nature doesn't want to know what your marketing plan is.
No.
Mother Nature is not interested in whether your flag gets onto the top or not. Mother Nature is not your friend. Mother Nature might let you onto the top for 5 minutes. And if you get up there in the most horrendous weather and you manage to get that flag up and flying for 30 seconds because you can't breathe and you can't move and you are frozen and you've got to get that flag out of your pocket. And if you've got somebody who can possibly get a photograph of that flag or even some video material of that flag, that then becomes a valuable icon. And that icon, all right, to a company like Discovery, a company that, frankly, in my view, it walks the talk. You get talkers and you get walkers, and Discovery walk the talk. What they did was they backed it and they went in properly. They really went all the way. Now, what happens with it is, you know, in a team is made up of individuals. You know, mountaineering, actually, for all we know, you know, you think about a team of individuals and you think that's great. You all back each other, and everybody does. There's, you know, you have to consider what's involved when somebody falls down on a mountain. If somebody falls down on the ground, what do? Do you leave them there and carry on to the summit, or do you pick them up and take them down? So there's morality involved. The question about it really is, what do you do when somebody falls down on a mountain? You pick them up and you take them home, and you don't worry about the summit. Some people don't believe that. Some people believe that you mustn't worry about somebody who's fallen down because you're barely able to help yourself at that altitude. Never mind to help somebody else. So what happens if somebody hasn't had the responsibility to train well, to be adequately prepared with backcountry skills on how to manage their oxygen system, if their oxygen system freezes up, on how to manage their nutrition, how to manage their hydration, how to deal with with the route, so that they don't get lost. If people don't have those skills and suddenly they find themselves in trouble, why should you be responsible? Some people question that. I don't question that. For me, what's important is life. If somebody falls down on a mountain, you go back down.
Yeah, that is actually interesting. After reading a lot about the mountain and obviously reading about the 1996 expedition, it was one of the reasons I called my first attempt in 2014 Ubuntu Everest, because I just felt that there is a way we can take Ubuntu from sea level to the top of the world. And that's exactly what you've alluded to. So, Sean, you've done the 7 summits. Which is the most memorable and why? Which was the most difficult and why?
You know, Sarah, they're all difficult, in different ways. You know, even Kilimanjaro. You know, people say, oh, you know, Kilimanjaro is a doddle. You know why they say that?
No.
Because they haven't climbed it. Because the last night on Kilimanjaro is not a doddle. Yeah. The last night on Kilimanjaro is tough. Yeah. Seriously, it's hard work. You'll know that. I mean, seriously, it's hard work to get up there. No one climbs Kilimanjaro and comes back and says, that was easy. I've never heard one person say that. I've only heard it from people who haven't climbed it. They go, yeah, no. I mean, I've had guys on tours. I've climbed Kilimanjaro 33 times. Now, what I'm saying to you is I've had guys come on the trips, clients, and they say, I've run the Comrades. The Comrades is nothing compared to Kilimanjaro. I've had guys who have swum the Robben Island to Bloberg swim. Yeah. They said that the coldest they've ever been was on Kilimanjaro. Now, you swim from from Robben Island to Bloberg with no wetsuit. They swim with a Speedo, 7 kilometers in the Atlantic. The water's between 7 and 9 degrees or something. Ridiculous temperature. They told me the coldest they've been is on Kilimanjaro because the altitude tests you. So that is the only thing about the 7 summits really, which is really testing, is the altitude. And for me, really, what was important with the 7 summits was to try to complete that series of documentaries that I produced, which is Freeze Frame. And Freeze Frame was really about making a documentary series about climbing the 7 summits, about finishing it. So it's funny. It's 8 one-hour documentaries about climbing the 7 summits, which is normal for me. You know, you can't. Some reason you just can't get it right. But anyway, the thing with it is what happens with that is it's a great way to see the world, and it's testing from the point of view of altitude, because all of those mountains are the highest mountains on every continent. And they're not very technical, barring Denali, barring the Hillary Step, as you'll know, barring 1 or 2 sections on Carstens, but they're not technical. You know, climbing Denali it can be a little bit technical here and there, but nothing like climbing K2 or climbing any really properly low altitude technical mountains. The thing about the 7 summits is that for me, I think it was about a lot about the people who I climbed with and the characters and seeing the world from the highest point on each continent. It's a really interesting journey, and it has. You know, it's a costly exercise because of the permits, but it's a wonderful way to see the world. And so, which was the most challenging? Everest is obviously the most challenging from the point of view of altitude, but Mount Vincent in Antarctica is colder. You know, the warmest temperature that you're going to have on Mount Vincent is 32 degrees below zero. Yeah. And when the wind blows, 50 degrees below zero. So the thing with that really is when you're operating a camera, when you take your glove off to operate the buttons, as I did on the summit, to get the image, the imagery from the top, is that my hand flash freezed in an instant. Because I was touching bits of metal on the camera. My camera stopped working in the cold. I had a big Betacam camera, my Chubby, those big, the big broadcast camera. And it was the only one that would work in those conditions. And so I hauled that thing because I wanted to get the highest quality and resolution pictures I could possibly get. But then my hand completely froze, and it was so painful going down with my hand. It took such a long time. I really thought I was going to lose some digits, but Mount Vincent is super cold. Mount Vincent. If you take a tea towel, like you in your tent, you'll have a cloth, which is for cleaning anything. What happens with it is it's so cold that the tea towel becomes a tray. So you can put cups on it. You can hold the cloth like this. It's so hard and so cold, and you can carry cups of coffee on the tray. Toothpaste is useless. It's like rock hard. If you take an elastic band, and you take an elastic band and you open the elastic band like this, when it's that cold, it doesn't come back. It just stays.
Crazy.
Everything molecularly, everything's different. It's the same as going to the South Pole. I've done 2 trips to the South Pole, and it's like that. It's it's working in an environment that is so testing, but at the same time is so magnificently photogenic.
Absolutely, it's breathtaking. Molly, I see Malette saying, Sean, you legend. And I've got somebody called Matt Carter saying, Lakar, Sean, tell them about your favorite group, he says, to climb Kilimanjaro. Matt, I think he tells everybody they're his favorite group after being there for 33 trips. Sean, you mentioned K2. I know the first time I heard that you had done K2 was from somebody I was in an expedition with at Everest Base Camp saying, there's a South African called Sean that was with us on K2. So how was that? How do you compare that to Everest as an example?
Who was that person?
I think it's an American guy. I'll tell you when I remember the name, but it's an American. He wasn't in your group, but he was in a group while you were there.
Okay, excellent. Sarah, what happened with it was in 2009,
yes.
I had been doing a lot of research about climbing K2. So as you know, K2 is the second highest mountain in the world, and it's on the Pakistan-China border. It's in the Karakorums. Pakistan is not easy to access. You have to go into Islamabad. You're not allowed to wear shorts. Pakistan is a very interesting country. At the time that we were there were quite a lot of bombings happening in Peshawar with Taliban, and there were all those challenges. Later on Nanga Parbat, there was an attack on one of the camps. There was lots of fundamentalist activity, and so the thing with that really was, for me, what was attractive about climbing K2 was, first of all, that it hadn't been climbed by a South African, and the other thing with it was that it is a most amazing place. In other words, the Karakoram is phenomenal. It's the most volatile and radical scenery and environment that you can be in. The Indus River, which originates in the Karakoram, in amongst the glaciers, it runs down to Karachi, down on the coast, 3,500 kilometers. And the volume of water that runs in that river is phenomenal. In Skadu, where you land, they grow the most amazing, beautiful cherries. And so it's a country of huge ironies, and it's a country that, when you go up there, it is so wild and so beautiful. When you start climbing at that level, everything kind of gets moved in, as far as I'm concerned, a little bit towards, if you want to summit that mountain, you have to be almost a little bit desperate, because it tests your
resolve.
It tests your how you question your mortality. Do you think that your life is more important than a summit, or do you think that the summit is more important than your life?
Yeah.
And some people, many mountaineers who have lost their lives. At the time that I was climbing, there was not one woman alive who had summited K2, and some of them, so in other words, there'd been summits of K2 by women, but they hadn't made it back. And at the time, there was Galinda Kaltenbrunner. She was climbing with us. She's the very first woman to climb 14 8,000 meter peaks without oxygen.
Wow.
Galinda Kaltenbrunner was climbing at the time, and what you start to realize is that climbers like Galinda Kaltenbrunner and this level of climbers, they're working with a level of Zen. They're working on a level of consciousness, which kind of takes you out of the physical. In other words, what happens with it is that you begin to climb for the stream of consciousness. What happens with that is I think they push themselves backed by connections to divinity, all right, because they climb as superhumans. They don't climb as people who live physical, spiritual. Their physiology, their anatomy is the same as ours, but they just, when you're climbing to 8,000 meters and higher without supplementary bottled oxygen at the speed that they're climbing. And they don't look, like Olympic athletes. They look like you and I. There's really no difference. So you start to question what it is that they have that you don't have. And I think, and I would, that what they do have is they explore deeper spiritual connections, and I can't say assistance, but a deeper spiritual tags to move them into these zones and into areas on mountains which are risky to life as our physical life, and they push through it. And they, in many ways, I think that the rewards of that are that their summits are really, sounds quite freaky and weird, are kind of like for spiritual gain. It's like they are. These are the kind of things that I was sort of experiencing there, and you don't and it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen consistently, and not with all climbers. But I think that what happens with it is, at that level, is that when you want to be climbing at that level, is that centeredness, that absolute, where you're able to meditate in the most radical storms, and you have that level of mental strength because you're so calm. Yeah. You are so you manage your brain. Your brain is screaming at you. You just get me down this mountain right now because I am going to die if you don't. And your brain is throwing everything at you: nausea, headaches. It's just telling you you are not going any further. And you can override your brain, neuroplasticity, and you're backed up by an incredible divine connection. I say that. So whether you believe it or not, others believe it or not, but I think that when you get to that level of climbing, that you start to discover, new level, and that's sort of, I was starting to explore that. And but K2 is a beast, and K2 is avalanches. It's the best way to climb K2 is with a very, very small team, alpine style, maybe 2 or 3 people max. You can't go with a big team. And we went in a team that was like 9, 10 people. I met basically these people over the internet. I never knew any of them, and in many ways, you're dealing with people with different skills, with different agendas, different nationalities. And I think, if anything, I'll take my children there to the base camp and show them what's happening there, and let them have a good look, because it's an amazing trek just to trek to K2 base camp. And if they ever were ever thinking of taking a dip at it, then I would look at trying to support them on how to get through that. In 2012, my good mates there, Fabrice Imperato and Tunch Findig, they were going. Now, my daughter Sarah was born on the 10th of May. And what happens with it is that I said to Kath, I must go on this expedition now, because they were my 2 good mates on that 2009 expedition. This was 3 years later. And my little one, Sarah, was born, and there was all kinds of things, and I didn't go. And they got to the top.
Oh, man.
No, so what happens with it is, Sarah, I love the idea of climbing mountains for the journey. But the unfortunate thing that is for me is that I don't climb mountains for journeys. I climb mountains to get to the top. So the thing with it is, it's a terrible thing, because that K2 is still rolling around on my plate.
Unfinished.
And now, like you said, I'm old.
I can see that you won't let me forget that comment. That is
No, I'm not
amazing.
old. I'm not old. I just look a bit old.
Very young.
So, but you know what the thing with it is, even if you can get an opportunity to go to K2 base camp, if you get an opportunity to go to K2 base camp, grab it with both hands.
Yeah.
It's really how high?
Yeah.
8611.
No,
Oh, the
no,
base
no.
camp. Oh, 5,000. 5,100.
Yeah. So that's
5,100. You know, the amazing thing about K2 base camp is that you can see the summit from
really?
from base camp, because the architecture of the mountain is like this. When you get to the bottom of the mountain, you walk across the glacier, you get to the bottom of the mountain like this, and it just goes like this.
Wow.
It's like that. There's none of this. It's just straight up. So
lots of face all the way.
Plenty of hard work there, and plenty of risk. Many people in that. There's the Gilkey Memorial there, which has got many plates of many lost lives of very skilled, very accomplished mountaineers.
Yeah.
And the thing with it is, you know, you've got to really want that one. If you've got to be desperate to get that one.
Yeah.
And so to debate, even Mark Horn tried to climb it. If Mark Horn doesn't get up K2, you know it's a big mountain.
Yeah, I was there with Louis last year. Sean, so you've climbed and you've guided people as well. I want to touch a little bit on that in terms of how do you go about identifying the right logistics company, identifying the right shaper to take you with? What are the few things or tips that you can actually share with the people that are listening that can save their lives? Because this the wrong shaper or the wrong people in the group may actually, cause death or stop you from summiting because of decisions made.
You know, Sarah, over the years, I've been very fortunate. What happens with it is that a guided expedition, all right, for us, we don't send people to mountains. In other words, I climb with every expedition who comes along with their clients. In other words, if the clients, if someone says we want to go and climb Kilimanjaro, I don't just send them to the mountain. They meet somebody there and they climb the mountain. If you're going to be a commercial operator, in other words, if you're going to suggest to somebody they climb a mountain and then you're going to take money off them without actually being there to be personally responsible for them, I always question that. Of course, there are great operations out there with great guides. They hire good guides, good commercial companies, and those guides are well paid and they look after their clients. But for us personally, me personally, I don't think that I could live with myself if one of my clients had died and I wasn't there. Yeah. So what I'm saying to you is, if you are going to climb with a commercial company, if you're going to think about getting to Everest, you got the money, try to go with the owner of the company.
Yeah.
Because what happens with it is, you know, you can have all kinds of different contracts in place. You can do whatever it is that's involved. What happens with it really is that at altitude, as you know, what you pay for a lot of the time is trust.
Yeah.
You know, there are nth number of stories of expeditions. They get to a place, they want to climb, and what happens with it is, young children, and what happens with it is they're wonderful, but do you want some? You can have mine, they're free. No, I'm joking. Is what happens is, you know, it's a situation where you have to really, you know, understand that not everybody has the same skill to get up a mountain. And what happens with it is that going to altitude, the management of a team of skilled climbers, of skilled guides, is often like in the Himalayas. You'll have a sirdar, and they will then, if there's issues, they will take clients down. What happens with it with a guy who's an owner operator, a guide who owns his operation, is that you build a good relationship with him. And what happens with it is that a good owner operator will try as hard as possible to make sure that you get to the summit safely and back. And I say that what that means is you're going to manage weather windows. It's not a matter of having a program and a schedule. We're going to summit on this day. Then what's going to happen with it is we're going to go down. What happens with it with an owner operator is 9 times out of 10 is they're also interested in getting up that mountain, because summits equals success. And success, if you're an owner operator and you have a good reputation, sells tours. It sells people the experience. You look after them, you with them. You make sure that they get back safely. You make sure that they're nourished on the way back up there. That you watch all the kit that they oversee, all the kit that they buy. You make sure they buy the proper equipment, and they're not borrowing stuff, and they're not buying things from Toys R Us and and from camping stores and so what I would say to anyone is, if you are thinking about climbing a big mountain, is try to find someone who as an owner operator will see you through, because they have all that experience and it's their business. And the other thing with it really is their best interests are with you, not only just to get to the summit, but to make sure that you get back safely.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I think that's very good advice. I mean, I've seen expedition leaders, running away from base camp when climbers are on the mountain. So I think that's great advice. And if you're listening, I think best you heed to that. Ian Price says, great, Sean. Oh, Rob. Hello, Rob. Thanks for joining us. He says, logistics, don't take Rob Bentley. So on a lighter note, I don't think it's a lighter note really, but it's COVID-19. How has it affected any of your 2020 plans in terms of expeditions? And what are you doing during this race time, apart from planning for, sea trips and educating children?
Arthur, it's been, we had a Kilimanjaro trip scheduled for September, October, and there's no chance. I mean, it was interesting because Tanzania, we reported, and I still think Tanzania's borders are open. You can travel to Tanzania. I think they're still open. I think Tanzania's still got no cases or whatever.
But they're not testing, maybe.
I don't know what they're doing, but Tanzania is very, very reliant on tourism, especially on Kilimanjaro at $170 a day, just for the permit. But what happens with it is, so that plan's out the window. We were hoping to do an Aconcagua trip in January, but that trip is fallen through. So it looks like our plan and we were going to do that just before leaving Durban to sail down to Cape Town, and then obviously across the Atlantic and Brazil and onwards on our trip. But in the meantime, what we're just focusing now is on surviving, because our business is decimated. Our revenue stream just stopped. All of the revenue that we were going to generate was just cancelled immediately. It just, we had to pay back deposits. So horrendous. And so, yeah, we are basically blown out of the water as far as any climbing considerations, any trips. We have nothing scheduled. It's COVID-19. Seriously, I must tell you, I'm a little bit angry, because the thing with that is I'm really, really conscious about making, we are trying as hard as we can to do everything that's possible to limit the spread of infections. You spray all the bags that come in, all the vegetables get soaked in iodine. I'm 54 years old, so it's like, what's it like if you're 54 years old? It's likely, you're not going to take it as well as what youngsters do. So try, if you do get exposed to COVID-19, get exposed in little doses, so you can you can build some immunity over time. Don't get exposed to a volume of the virus. If you get a volume of the virus, it's likely that you can get very sick. But if you get little bits of exposure, it's likely that you can build immunity over time. But who knows? How much immunity can you build? People who have been COVID, then positive, then tested negative, supposed to have some kind of immunity, and then tested positive again. So it's just an absolute mess, And I mean, without sounding self-righteous, I just think that they must go and find out how this happened, so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
It's really that there must be a proper investigation by the World Health Organization into how this started, sort it out, and make sure it doesn't happen again, because the impact of it is massive.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's just globally. It's kind of, the turmoil that it's created. The impact on economies. It's just. Look, I'll tell you what the only saving grace is that I had a discussion with a mate of mine about what's actually happening, what's the economic impact. And apparently things are not as bad as what the impact was of the 2008-2009 credit crunch, the crash of the markets then. I think that yes, there are lots of jobs at it, but it's likely that things will recover. And we don't, when? So much uncertainty, nobody knows. When are we going to get out of here? But at least we have some freedom, and we can't spend our lives whinging. But I do wish there were some decisions that were made, like 100% capacity in taxis.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, but don't send the kids to school. And I mean, seriously, there are some poor decisions being made.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
The most interesting thing is it's global. It's not that thing where say Ebola, it's their problem and not ours. So it's in everybody's interest to come up with a solution, and that gives me a little bit of hope. So I don't know. You probably have answered this one, but what differentiates you from other people that actually guide people to mountains? What differentiates how you do things? What's your proposition?
What I always say is I'm not the best, but I am the most expensive.
Okay, that's interesting. Why?
No, I just say that tongue in cheek. Is what happens with it is, there are certain criteria that lots of guides need to meet. For example, you basically complete a mountain guide's course, and what happens with it is that you back it by experience. Yeah. Because there is nothing that's more valuable than a QBE. It's qualified by experience.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's what happens with it is, our lives are. We spend so much time in universities studying all the theory. We study like with yachting. You study the yacht masters and you study all of the theory. And, you use 5% of all the theory. Now, the thing about experience is when you're qualified by experience is you use all of your experience, all of the time. And that makes a huge difference, it really is about, if you're going to find somebody who's going to try and get you up a mountain, try and find somebody who's been there many times, someone that you can get on with, someone who's got a sense of humor, someone who's compassionate. You know what it's like working with the Sherpas. Yeah. And I mean, just the most amazing people, because they have the work ethic of a beehive. And they just have, the temperament and the nature of like an anteater. They're just so chilled. And they're just amazing people to work with. So find someone who has that kind of temperament where you can have a laugh about what you're doing, and it's not regimental sergeant major. And we kind of also someone who's well organized. And Kath, my wife, is brilliant at that. She's brilliant at logistics. She's brilliant at at communication, of just getting the message through to clients about what they'll need, what to take with lists of, and she writes lists that seriously, when you look at these lists, you just think, jeez, that's organized. And so it's like you got to try and find that sort of combination. We're sort of a husband and wife team, and but actually, I think we're more led by my wife, because what's involved with behind the scenes, what Kath does behind the scenes, it makes it so easy to render it on a mountain, because everybody goes in there. And the expectations are already, aligned and are met. So you're not dealing with managing, stuff that people are uncertain about. There's a balance between taking someone on an adventure and oversharing the adventure before you get there, and letting them experience their own elements of that adventure, create their own stream of consciousness about what this climb should be, making sure that they get up there safely and making sure that they get back safely. And that really is, that goes down to experience. It really is just about having a good time safely.
Yeah, thank you for that. Ian Price again says, great comments, Sean. Experience is what counts. So you've got a thumbs up there from Ian.
Thank you, Ian.
I have to ask, mountains or the sea? And whichever one you pick, you have to tell us why.
Sarah, the thing with that is mountains are spectacular. They're cold. They present huge physical challenges to your anatomy and your physiology. Managing altitude is a huge. This whole thing about COVID as well. It's amazing, because all of the symptoms are like altitude sickness. They even when they came, and I said to Kath earlier, I said, this sounds like they need decks. Sort this out. Seriously, do you believe it? 4 months down the line, they reckon the way we treat this is with decks. The thing with that really is, is dealing as the management of altitude, where where your body is deficient of oxygen, where your lungs can't process oxygen, can't push oxygen through the membranes of your lungs and into your bloodstream. It's a hugely uncomfortable state. And the thing with that is, when you obviously learn to breathe, seriously, if there's anyone who's watching this who knows me on the mountain, this is, I start giving the breathing lecture, and I think to myself, well, sometimes you are such a freak, come with these breathing lessons. But the thing about getting up a mountain is it's about breathing your way up, and it's about eating and drinking your way up.
Yeah.
So the thing with that is, on a boat, you've got plenty. You can put so much food and water. We've got big tanks. We've got 500 liters of tanks. We've got storage for all the food in the world. We've got a freezer. It's this. But the thing about the ocean is there's nowhere to hide.
You're funny you know that, because I felt exactly that at the start, because there is no sense of achievement, because there's nothing that you're aiming towards, no small wins. The only thing we relied on was the compass. You look where you're coming from, it looks the same. I've said this before, by the 6th day, I wondered whether we're going in the right direction or we're going round and round. But with Everest, you can see, I'll get to that rock, I've achieved something. So I guess the sea is a little bit like that, I'm assuming.
You know, Sarah, the sea is a wonderful thing, because the sea changes every single day.
Wow.
So every single day you can go down to the water's edge and you can launch a boat, and it tests you in a different way. The water's warmer, or it's colder, or it's green, or it's blue. The wind is coming from the southwest, or it's coming from the northeast. The current is coming from the south, or it's pushing from the north.
Yeah.
And the combination of these different elements bring the allure of the sea. If the wind's been blowing at 40 or 50 knots deep out at sea, then the swell changes, and the height changes. And these challenges and trying to be connected with the ocean, all right? So trying to work with Mother Nature and Neptune on the ocean, those challenges are way more testing than mountaineering.
Wow.
Because at sea, it's not a matter of like, let's drop the anchor. In the ocean, you are sailing 24/7. You have to get somewhere. Now, when it's just 3 or 4 of you on the boat, say 2 people get seasick, there's just 2 of you, you have to learn how to sleep. So every 20 minutes, the alarm goes off.
Yeah.
You wake up, you look around, make sure that you're not going to collide with a ship that may be coming towards you. Seriously, you always have to have a watch on a watch. So it's between you and somebody else to make sure that there's always a watch. Every 20 minutes, you have to get up, look to scan the horizon, make sure that everything's all right. And if everything's all right, you continue sailing.
Wow.
So what happens with it is you get into levels of sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
Because you're sailing long across the ocean. You do 10, 12, 14 days. We've got to, and that in itself is, I mean, for me, it's a bonus because I'm an absolute insomniac. So the thing with that is, if I get 3-4 hours sleep in a night, I'm chuffed. I'm too excited about life to miss out by sleeping. There's too many good things to get through in this very broad and long and wide life. I don't want to sleep missing out. I'll sleep when I'm dead. But the thing with it is, what happens with it is sailing. What it can do for you is it can take you to parts of the planet that you can't get to with diesel and with petrol.
True.
You can sail to islands from here with a fully equipped boat.
Yeah.
Go and experience the most amazing natural environments. Swim with dolphins, swim with whales, catch marlin, eat fish every single day.
That sounds amazing, Sean.
And you can surf your boat, and you can surf, and you can educate your kids, etc.
We are almost we've run out of time, but I have to ask you this. What advice would you give to a younger Sean Wisedale based on what you know today and the experience that you've gone through? Because there are people that follow this site that are younger that would love to get your insights on that.
It seems like a well-worn cliche is to say that you have to have a dream and a vision. In other words, you have to dream. You have to be able to not be able to. When you're young, it's very hard to kind of develop some kind of an idea of what you want to be doing when you later in your life. It's very hard to do that. You don't know what your passions are. You don't know what you're passionate about when you're 18 or 20. Maybe, you might meet someone and then you go and have a game of football and you discover you're passionate about football. Yeah. But whether you follow it through and you become a professional footballer and you live your passion is a completely different story. So what I would say to young people early on in your life is try to discover what you are passionate about. If you like going into the wilderness, if you like cruising with your dad, going camping, fishing, sailing, if you like being on the ocean, try to become a guide. Try to become a photographer or try to become a doctor and be an expedition doctor. Try to become an expedition photographer or try to become an expedition guide if you think that's what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about mathematics, phone Elon Musk and see if he can give you a job doing rocket science and rocket sums on, trajectories into space. Go on the Mars mission. And what I'm saying is try as early as possible to define and to find what it is that you're good at and what it is that you're passionate about, that you really, really love doing. If someone says to you, no, you must focus on your schoolwork now. You're not allowed to go fishing, but you love fishing, okay? Get your schoolwork done and make sure that you get yourself time so that you can go fishing and you can become a professional fishing charter captain. Or whatever it is that you find out there in this world that you're passionate about, that you really love doing. If you want to be an artist, but your father said, no, I'm sending you to law school, just get the degree out of your way. In the meantime, do your art, pursue your passion, pursue your dream, and fulfill your life with your passion. But remember, I always say this, set a goal. In other words, a goal is only a goal when you put a time frame to it. You have to say, I'm going to be an artist before the end of this decade. I am going to be a professional artist.
Yeah.
And pursue your passion, all right? Don't worry about the money. The money, if you pursue your passion and you're good at what you do, will come on its own. You will fulfill your life by living out your dreams and your passions, and money will not matter. Of course, money is important, but resources will come to you if you pursue your passions and you pursue your dreams.
Yeah, wow, fantastic, fantastic advice, Sean. And thank you for your time. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. This was Sean Wisedale, the first man from Africa to complete the 7 summits. And next, he's taking his whole family to go around the world. So good luck, Sean, and we'll be following you. And maybe if you have connectivity there, we can do another interview, a follow-up interview. What do you say?
Yes. And congratulations on your summit of Everest again.
Thank you, Sean. Oh, you know what I forgot to ask? What was that in 2015? You guys had bags of biltong. I've never seen so much biltong at base camp. I was like, what?
It's funny now, in Australia and New Zealand, I see all the Australians and the New Zealanders and the Kiwis, they're all going, where's the biltong? That's all they're into now. Biltong is it's a global, it's the only way to travel. Yeah.
Thank you, Sean. Have a good one.
That's right. Take care. Thanks for the chat. Bye, everyone. Bye.